Hola de nuevo al programa número 28 de Librísimo. Como siempre ya sabes que puedes suscribirte al canal tanto en YouTube como en iVoox y puedes dar un me gusta o dejar tus reflexiones en la caja de comentarios. Hoy nos acompaña la autora norteamericana Arkady Martine, el seudónimo literario de AnnaLinden Weller. Ganadora del premio Hugo por las novelas Una memoria llamada Imperio y Una desolación llamada Paz, esta escritora de ficción especulativa también es historiadora especializada en el Imperio Bizantino y urbanista. En la actualidad trabaja en el ámbito de la reglamentación sobre energía limpia y en la regulación de los servicios públicos en Nuevo México. Tanto en su faceta literaria como académica explora temas como la política fronteriza, la retórica, la propaganda y los límites del mundo. Nacida en Nueva York, ha vivido en Turquía, Canadá, Suecia y Baltimore y actualmente reside en Santa Fe junto a su esposa, la también escritora Vivian Shaw. Vamos a hablar con ella de Una desolación llamada Paz, que va a ser publicada próximamente en español con la editorial Nocturna. So welcome to another episode of Librisimo, and here we are. I'm so excited because today we have a great visitor. We have somebody from all the way from the States, from the United States. Is Arkady Martine. Hi, Arkady.
Hi, Christina. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, it's so excited. I'm so thrilled that you're here. We're here because I don't know how to present it. Is it, would you say is the sequel, or would you say is the second part of biology or by
Yeah, it's the
duology?
second book in a duology. You can
Duology.
read both of my two books independently, but you can also read them together. So this is part two, and
Part.
it's come out in Spanish, which is why we're celebrating this.
The first one, for everybody who's watching and listening, it's called a memory called Empire, and this one, it's a desolation called Peace. And I have to say, I made my first mistake calling it a biology. It's a duology, but anyhow, it's okay. I wanted to ask you what we ask everybody who's visiting us, which is the first thing the readers meet when they face your story. It's not the beginning of the story itself, it's the title, and it says a lot about the book. So I would like to know, how did the title A Desolation Called Peace came about? And I guess you're going to make reference to the previous novel, but I want you to maybe.
So it was really hard to title the previous novel. I had sold it to Tor Books and under a working title that I didn't like and that I had never meant to use. And we didn't know what the title was. And I kept making up new ones and sending them off to my agent and my editor, like, will this work? Here's a whole list of things I think are okay. And they kept coming back being like, no, marketing hates it. No, that's boring. No, that's confusing. No, we want to go broader than that. So I was like, this is like throwing water balloons at a castle. It just goes splash against the wall, nothing happens. So I was in Prague. This is relevant, I promise. I was in Prague for a conference on narratology. This is in 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. And I had begun writing or planning the second book because I had sold it as a two-book deal. And I was sitting in a bar, drinking absinthe and reading Tacitus, which makes me sound a lot cooler than I am, but it was for work, technically, not the absinthe, just the Tacitus. And Tacitus is this Roman author who wrote a great deal of sort of stories about how the Roman Empire conquered most of Europe. And there's this particular work of his called the Agricola, where a character in that story says about the Romans that they make a desert and they call it peace, which is like this quote that it's in Latin originally. And I was reading it, thinking about because I was working on a project on like rhetoric of war and rhetoric of empire, and how people who are on borders talk about those things. Um, then this was from my academic work at the time. And I read it, I was like, oh, well, that's the title of the second book. Like I haven't written the second book yet, except for this like outline part. But I know that. So I literally I text my agent and my editor from the bar. What do you think about A Desolation Called Peace? Because I had the whole thing like a flash, for the second book. And they got back to me when the time zones rolled around properly, with yes, absolutely. And then my editor said, well, make the title of the first book sound like that one.
Ah,
So I built it backwards. The title of the
wow.
first book is A Memory Called Empire. But if I hadn't been thinking about Tacitus in a bar in Prague, I would never have found either one.
It's a wonderful story. I would have never imagined that it was the second book titled that kind of like it's a wonderful story. I mean, it's unique. It's great.
I think so, yeah.
And Prague,
It's just an
everybody should go to
accident of
Prague.
publishing. Like publishing has these weird timelines
Yes.
where your first book can not have come out yet and you're already working on the second one.
Yeah. Yeah. True. And I wanted to talk about the genesis of the duology because I was thinking more about this book, but you already mentioned it's kind of like it's a story in two parts, or even though
Yes.
you can read them independently. But I would like to know, because I think it's a unique moment and it says a lot about the author, the creative process, and many other things. Do you remember when and where were you when you come up with the idea of the duology?
Well, in a lot of ways, these two books are what I wrote instead of finishing an academic book. So I started writing the first one in 2014, and I had just finished my PhD. So I was still thinking very much about the subjects that I worked on in my PhD. I did my PhD on Byzantine and Armenian history, and this kind of like how do people talk about living at the edge of empire, and how do they like maintain ideas about imperial ideology or anti-imperial ideology while on a border. Um, and I was really obsessed with these ideas and these people that I had spent like this whole dissertation thinking about. And but when you write academic work, you don't really have a lot of room to have the emotional impact of the subjects and ideas you're discussing come out, in your writing. That's mostly correct. Like that's not where that kind of thing goes. But I had a whole lot of feelings, and thoughts about, what I had been working on. And I also really wanted at that point to try my hand at a novel, which I had never done successfully before. I had been a decently successful short fiction writer, had several short stories published, and I still work in short fiction quite a lot. But I had not written a novel at that point. So I just started writing sort of, if my dissertation was fictional and had all the things that I liked in it, what would that story be? And it turns out to be a story about someone from a small, city-state, really, on the edge of a big empire, coming to the center of that empire and dealing with assimilation, dealing with the dangers and bargains of imperial power. And it is in no way like a one-to-one retelling of events, of things that happened in the 11th century. They're not related plot-wise, really, very much at all. But they are related theme-wise and
Yes.
in terms of what I was thinking about when I wanted to set up the scenario. So a lot of it comes from the academic work I was doing in the 2010s.
It's so interesting because when I had the opportunity to talk to PJ de Clark, he also was
Yes.
mentioning that it was because of his academic work that he also started to think about stories that he wanted to talk about because of the issues he was addressing, and it was also an emotional way
Yeah.
to address them.
I think it's very common for those of us who both do theoretical academic work and write fiction that you find one to be an outlet for the other, sometimes in both directions. I love P.J. Clark's
Yeah.
work enormously, and I definitely see where his work is inspired and influenced by his academic career.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of inevitable, because you're investing so much. Anybody who has done some academia knows that how much you have to invest, how much time, energy, and will to finish, and
Yes.
so it brings a lot of things to you. And I love the fact that you were talking about all those issues, because I wanted to talk about the setting. And I would like to, for somebody who doesn't know what it is, how would you describe the I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it.
Teixcalan.
Teixcalan.
Yeah, there you go.
Teixcalan. I was thinking Techalan. I don't know.
That would
Teixcalan
be the right
Empire.
way to pronounce it if I was really using like the Nahuatl pronunciation that it's inspired by. But I deliberately am not, because it's not real Nahuatl, and I don't want to say that it is. So the setting, it is a very far future setting. So this is science fiction. It is in space. There's no like connection to Earth or Earth history. You can believe if you want that Earth happened sometime in the past, or you don't have to. I've never decided, and I don't think readers can go either way. Doesn't really matter. It is a giant space empire with a version of both fast sublight travel and faster than light travel, so they can jump around their big empire through these they're kind of like mountain passes. I built them to be like mountain passes. They're called jump gates. You can like go through, but you've got like your usual sci-fi trimmings, like spaceships and laser guns and things like that. And very strange brain augmentation technology, which is one of the things that I end up playing with. So that's the big empire. Teixcalan is inspired a lot by the Byzantine Empire, but also a lot by the Mexica,
Yes.
and also by I'm an American, despite everything, and a lot by the influence that 20th and early 21st century America had culturally on the rest of the world. That kind of imperialism by culture
Yeah.
feeling. So that's the big setting. The smaller setting inside that, my main character, Mahit Desmar, comes from a place called Lasalle Station, which is a space station, a permanent space station, has about 30,000 people on it. And they're basically their own independent little country. They mine things from local asteroids and sell that. And they are under a ton of cultural pressure from Teixcalan and the threat of military force to be annexed. But right now they're independent. And Mahit, my main character, has spent most of her life, she's in her 20s, really loving the literature of Teixcalan and like the culture of Teixcalan. Like, if you're someone who has studied a language or a literature that isn't yours, and really found like a lot that speaks to you in it, that experience is what I was trying to evoke. And she gets an opportunity to become ambassador to Teixcalan. And because things have gone very wrong diplomatically between her space station and the Empire, and then she gets embroiled in a murder mystery, which is the story of the first book, and in a interplanetary war in the second book.
Yeah, and one of the things I really thought that were provoking is this technology or ability where I don't want to discuss too much. I don't know if you're comfortable talking a lot about it, but I like the name of Imagos because it reminds me of Jorge Luis Borges, who used it in
That's on purpose.
Yeah. And it's super interesting because it would mean that basically you kind of kind of like have somebody else in your brain, but in a way that I haven't seen it, because it's not just, I don't want to talk too much about it. You
Okay.
guys have to read it.
I have a sort of short version. So the Imago technology, I designed it to be like you have the skill set of the person who last had your job
Okay.
before you did. But it's not just like the skill set. It's not just like I know which wrench to use. It's all of that like soft skill stuff, which,
Yeah.
because I mean, anyone who's ever taken up a new job and discovers that the person who had it last knew how to make that job work and you don't know anything
Yeah.
because you have no way of knowing all of the little secret things they learned over years. And that's a real problem for organizations. And I'm really interested in things like that, like institutional memory and how like people pass down subtextual knowledge. So I made it like this is the thing I love about science fiction. You can make a social or sociological question real in a way that is harder to do in mimetic fiction and fiction that's just set in the world we are in. Um, so I was like, okay, so how would I fix institutional memory? What if you actually had the last person who had your job in your head with you? Um, but mostly about your job, like in not like brain sharing with someone who's alive, but having like this inheritance from the person who did your role, as opposed to the kind of inheritance we usually talk about, the person who is your ancestor biologically or familially or culturally. And the fun of setting that kind of thing up, making it real, is that then you can think about the problems that might happen in that
Right.
scenario. And in these books, there are several problems that come up related to those machines and how they work.
Exactly. And it is so fun to go through them and find out what are those challenges, because as if it wasn't hard enough to be a person.
Yeah.
Imagine if you have to
What if you're
share.
like a lot of people all at the same time?
Exactly. I was thinking a little bit when I was reading it. It it it's not the same at all, but I was thinking about people with splitting personalities, like
Yeah.
how would they some I would love for somebody with a splitting personality to read the books, see what they
I would
think.
be really interested in
Yeah.
that because it's not a disorder that I have any personal experience
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that from things I've heard from like reading accounts from people who have that particular neurology, the ones who are happy describe something like the state that I was writing about the ones that work
Yes. Yeah.
in these books. The Imago machines where everything goes as it's supposed to go. You have this kind of helpful other person who's not really all the way there and they don't really take control of you in any way,
Yeah.
but you can consult them and some things that you didn't know how to do, you now know how to
Yeah.
do.
And let's talk about the characters. There's a lot of
Okay.
them. We talk a little bit. You
Yes.
talk about Mahit a bit, but I love the names. In this particular one, in A Desolation Called Peace, we see 9 hibiscus, Mahit,
Hmm.
3 seagrasses, 8 antidote is one of my favorites. There's
I
many,
love
many
them.
more, but I just selected those because I
Hmm.
think they're the ones that have a lot of impact. And
Yeah.
some of the rest, I don't know how to pronounce the names. I have to
Some
be
of them are
honest.
hard. So those four you mentioned, those are the ones who have point of view in this book, in A Desolation Called Peace. It's written in four different points of view that alternate. And Mahit is still Mahit, though she's had some bad experiences,
Yes.
and they've made her grow as a person and given her new political problems. Um, Nine Hibiscus is the general of a large part of the Tixcolanli warship fleet, and she's been charged with fighting this impossible war against aliens.
Yeah.
And she's kind of an example of someone who is too good at her job, so her superiors are trying to either push her out or get her killed,
Yeah.
so that she's less threatening. And I really wanted to play with that dynamic when I was writing her, like someone who is super competent in her own sphere to the point of being dangerous, but maybe not as competent in thinking really widely about like what effects her actions could have. And because I think that's an interesting type when you're writing about people whose actions have effects on the world stage. People who are good but have blind spots. So I really enjoyed writing her and writing her friendship with her second in command, whose name is 20 Cicada, sometimes called Swarm. And that was fun to do because writing a friendship between a man and a woman that isn't romantic at all was really nice to do. I wanted to write one of those because I've had several in my own life that have been very important to me. And so I really like getting to put that on the page. Three Seagrass, who sometimes is my favorite, she appears in both books, in the first and second, but she only has point of view in the second. She is a kind of a member of the Tex Calumny's CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. She's a spy and like cultural functionary, and she starts out this second book having gotten a promotion and a great deal of success and being absolutely miserable, and making a wild and probably poor decision to get involved in a distant battlefield on the edge of the empire because she is bored and unhappy. And I wrote that one from life. I've done stupid things like that. Not quite as big because luckily I've never had an interstellar war to deal with. But so she is also the love interest for Mahit, even though it doesn't resolve in a super clean way, but they have a romantic connection throughout this book. And her goals are really, she figures them out as she goes because she's kind of in some ways my unreconstructed imperial character. She doesn't know when she's being horribly racist, because she doesn't have the cultural context. She learns some of it, but probably not enough. She's probably a good person, or at least she'd like to be. But mostly what she is ambitious and very, very competent. And so much fun to write. And the last character is 8 Antidote, who is an 11-year-old boy who happens to be the heir to the imperial throne. And I adore writing this age group. So I've never written like a book for children or a YA novel, anything like that. But writing 8 Antidote made me think I would love to write like a middle grade novel, like for people around that age, like 9 to 12, because it is an age where you have like an 11-year-old has their own mind and they have their own opinions and they can be very, very smart about what they see in the world and understanding it. But they have only just begun to have any independence and they have almost no power. And it's before like the hormones and transition of adolescence kicks in. So it's not really a story about like becoming an adult so much as it is stories about 11-year-olds are like about becoming part of a community. And I actually think 8 Antidote's story is about what kind of person he's going to be in his community, which happens to be likely he's going to be in charge of it, and what he thinks ethical action is going to be, and whether he can figure that out in such a way that is meaningful in any way. Like, does understanding that something is right or wrong mean that he can change it? And that's really the story I'm exploring with him.
And I like specifically about him that we know that he's probably going to be in charge in the future and is being prepared for that. But also the people in power can have high empathy. And we are maybe nowadays, because there's so many conflicts and horrible conflicts in the world, we kind of lose that. We think that people in power, oftentimes it happens like that, they completely lose empathy. So I thought that even though you wrote it years ago, but I think it could, it's something universal and it could be in any point in this 21st century you can apply to.
Yeah, I think it still speaks to the present moment.
Yes.
There are definitely characters who have much less empathy than this kid,
Yes.
and
It's
he's
hopeful
able to
in a way.
recognize that. It is hopeful
Yeah.
because he's able to recognize the difference and to make a stand for it, which I think is, even if he has a lot of power, but he doesn't have access to most of it yet because he's very young. And I think that's actually in different ways true for most people. People have a lot of power, but not very much access to
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
in one way or another. But sometimes, like, recognizing what levers you do have can make very large changes.
And I also kind of enjoy a lot the names themselves of the characters and the places and even the spacecrafts. It makes me
Oh,
think
that
a
is so
little
much
bit
fun.
of Ian Banks and his funny spacecraft names. They're amazing. So I would like to know what was your criteria for coming up with those names for characters and for places?
Okay, so I'll take care of LaSalle Station first because they're easy. People on LaSalle Station have normal names. They may sound weird to most readers, but they are names that could come from a language that's very like modern Armenian today. So like all
Okay.
of those names like fit into that sort of collection of sounds. And they got first names and last names, all kind of standard. However, people in the Teixcalaanli Empire have very different names. They have names that have a number part and a noun part. The numbers are could be anything. They're usually under 100. And the nouns can be anything that is not animate, so nothing that moves under its own power.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
with one exception, there's someone who has a one person in this book who has a name that is an exception. 20 cicada. Cicadas
Yeah,
move under
that's
their
what I was
own power.
thinking. I'm
But
like
yeah,
cicada,
he's
right?
special. He's weird.
Yeah.
He comes from a subculture inside the empire that might not be as assimilated as he
Okay.
pretends to be. But normally, like your standard Teixcalaanli name is something like 3 seagrass or 9 hibiscus. I used a lot of plant names. I used a lot of architecture names, like for the nouns, and tools and things in space, because I thought that would kind of be like the set of things that were natural to a planet, things that were astronomical, and ways of like changing those things, tools. Um, and I got this naming method by thinking about not the Mexica, but actually the Maya civilization complex in Mesoamerica, and the ceremonial names that some of their powerful people had, which come from like a special ceremonial calendar, that your number comes from what day you're born on
Yeah.
and then what year it is. So you can get things like one jaguar, like these great sounding names. I loved how they sounded. But I didn't want it to be an exact copy. So like I'm actually using the rules for animate and inanimate that come from, if you've ever studied a language like Russian, and you have animate nouns and non-animate nouns, and they do different things grammatically. Like some things can have some verbs and some things you need a special verb for.
Okay.
The same rules. Um, so those are the names mostly, and the names for the spaceships are, I think there's rules for them. Like I know when I've got it right. They tend to have 3 words,
Yeah.
and the words end in something with in English ing, so it's like something that is happening currently.
Ah.
So it's a gerundive. So like, and there's exceptions there too. There's the big ship is called Wait for the Wheel, um, which yeah. But the ships are named like you could read them off in poetry.
And how about the planets?
I think I just named them. Um, Things that sounded right.
Okay.
Like sometimes you just make it up.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, because they sound really amazing. So I'm like,
Oh,
maybe
thank
there's a
you.
hidden
There
rule there.
probably is.
Okay.
when you're writing science fiction, you have to name so many
Yes.
things, which is hard.
Yes.
Like what I always want to do is make sure that none of the names are super close to any other names, so
Mm,
I can help the reader as much as I can to not
mm.
be confused.
And the good thing about the books is that at the end you have an appendix where everything is
Yes.
registered, listed, and you can always go if you have any doubts. But it's very easy, and you don't really need it. I just love lists. So
I do too. That's why I wanted that. Like my favorite books in fantasy and science fiction when I was little always had lists like that in them.
yes, I
So
love the
I wanted to have one
Silmarillion
for
just because
me.
of that,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it's full of lists. And so I'm happy that we're not the only people who do that.
No.
I wanted to ask you about what was the biggest challenge in writing this book? Maybe because it's the conclusion of the
Mhm.
of those two books of the story, and also what was the easiest thing for you?
So the hardest thing was getting the pacing right.
Hmm.
So in the first book, I only had one point of view character.
Hmm.
Only Mahit ever gets to have point of view. But in this book, there are four.
Yeah.
And that means I have a lot more like, what does this character know when problems? And the reader needs to know everything,
Yeah.
but not be bored. So trying to get the end of the book where the points of view are very influential on each other,
Mm-hmm.
to feel not rushed, but not too slow either. That was hard. I did a lot of revision on that part. Tried it a couple of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the easiest part of writing it was actually finding some of the voices for those new points of view. I really enjoyed writing Eight Antidote. I really
Yes.
enjoyed writing Three Seagrass. I really enjoyed writing Nine Hibiscus.
Mm-hmm.
Like these having different people that could speak. That was really fun.
For me, I have to tell you, some of the my favorite passages in the book, and I highlighted them, is when these alien
Mm.
entities speak. It's I don't want to say
Oh, yeah.
when you can find them. You
They
will
they
find them.
talk.
You'll see them.
Yeah.
They are amazing. It's just, and
Thank
I
you.
remember actually China Mabel said to me once that one of the hardest things he thinks in order to when anybody writes science fiction is to try to explain the world from the eyes of an alien, because it's very difficult. It's kind of like you're setting yourself for failure because it's
Yeah,
so
like
complicated that you never
you have
really.
to communicate to,
Yes,
but you're supposed
exactly.
to be describing something that doesn't communicate. Like, how
Exactly.
does that work? It's so hard. I'm glad you liked mine.
I love
I
those
am
parts. I thought
when I figured that out, I was so happy.
because in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, it's more like almost poetic prose for me, at
Mhm.
least. Or I read it like that, and in my mind, it was more. Yeah, it was more like lyric, like a poem.
Yeah. No, it absolutely in English. So I need to go look at I haven't seen yet the Spanish edition of
Mm-hmm.
Desolation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how the translators dealt with these sections. But in English, they are written in sort of first person plural, without any variation there. So a collective we
Mm-hmm.
speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just one voice. It's a we that has different parts inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it is very lyrical. It is pretty poetic.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to make it feel as alien as I could while still conveying information
Mm-hmm.
and being readable. Because one of these sections starts off the book. So if I can't get a reader to read it,
Mm-hmm.
then the reader's not going to go on to the rest of the book. So it needs to both be expansive and somewhat clear,
No,
and interesting.
they're amazing, and they were some of my favorite. And I think I kind of like highlight almost all of them. It's like, oh, I love this. Oh, this is great. Because also the thoughts that come through the reflections are so interesting. And I wanted to know if we're kind of like wrapping up already. I want to know if you knew exactly when you come up with the idea of these books, of these stories, you knew exactly how the books were going to end.
Well, yes and no. I know for the first book, I knew like the emotional place where I wanted the book to end. Like I knew that Mahit was going to have to make a very particular decision. I knew what that decision was, and I knew what her answer was, but I didn't know how she had gotten there, like at all. That was very much a process of discovery through writing the book. Like, and in the second book, I knew what like the setup I had done was, and that there were only a couple of ways that it could resolve, and which ones I really didn't want to do. And then there were several different ways I could have resolved it, like completely. But the one I ended up picking was actually probably the most optimistic of the ones I thought about.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did that. It to me at least still feels earned.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I hope readers also think that.
It's really cool to read the whole story, come up and see how the journey and up to that point, that the end. Can you share with us what are you working on in terms of fiction?
Oh, sure. So I have just started this new novel project. I had a novella come out earlier this year, not yet in Spanish. I hope someday, called Rose House, which is a near future sort of architecture, murder mystery, AI novella thing. But the book I'm working on right now is not related to that or to Tixcalan. It's called The Trace. And it is a kind of Cold War fantasy novel.
Wow.
And set in not Earth, but another world, like an analog world, a second world.
Okay.
So the city that I'm setting it in should feel a little bit like East Berlin or Beirut or some combination of the two.
Okay.
So I've kind of just really gotten into the groove with that, and I'm hoping it will come out sometime in 27 or 28. It takes a long time to publish books, and sadly, I'm not a fast writer, but I am excited about this one, and it explores some new stuff for me. A lot about like really good teams at work and what happens when they fall apart.
Okay. It sounds very realistic.
Well, in some ways,
Yeah.
but there's also like demons and luck magic and a particular character who uses a kind of phone phreaking to talk to the telephone lines.
Oh, okay.
Except it's magic, because why not?
And I have two more questions. They are kind of fast questions, and
Sure.
we ask everybody because we're building a small library here in Librissimo. The first question is, if you could invite somebody to be at Librissimo for us to interview him, her, them, who would it be? But it has to be alive.
Okay, well, you have to be able to do it, yes, and necromancy is frowned upon.
No, not now. Not yet.
You should talk to Amal El-Mutar if you haven't yet.
Yes.
Who I adore talking to. And I got to be on a panel with her in Columbus, Ohio earlier this year. And she's a great friend, and her writing is so brilliant and so lyrical and so interesting. And she has a short story collection coming out next year, which I think you might want to talk about.
Sure. I'm writing her name. I also know her a little bit, so I'm sure that maybe we can make it happen. That would be fantastic. And my last question is, because as I told you, we're building this small library, and at the end of every season, we publish the recommendations that our visitors made us, in terms of the last book that you've read that really blew your mind and you would love to recommend to whoever is in the other side watching or listening?
So I'm like a couple years behind the times, but I just finished reading The Chosen and the Beautiful by Niveau,
Okay.
which is a fantasy retelling of The Great Gatsby. And
Okay.
it is so good. Like, it sounds like The Great Gatsby, like the language is pitch perfect pastiche, but it's also just a fantastic retelling. It's from the point of view of a different character, and it creates a version of that story that has magic and hell in it. And it really shows a different side of the story, and I loved it. So I highly recommend that.
Okay. Well, I wrote it down, and we will release it at the end of the season, as we did with the previous season. And I wanted to thank you so much. I want to also, please, everybody who's watching or listening, you really need to check out both books, but especially this one that's coming up right now, A Desolation Called Peace. It's coming out with Nocturna. Don't forget it. You will not regret it. Thank you, Arkady, and I hope that you will come again to visit us, maybe to talk about Rose House or The Trace.
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely.
This is your
love to
home.
do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that.